It's a beautiful Friday morning, and we are rising and shining all the way from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. My name is Uyai Anek, and good morning and thanks for joining us.
And I am Francis Oyemide. Glad to have you joined us. And of course, Rise and Shine Friday, it's usually a little bit more tilted towards you and lifestyle and things happening in the country that, pertains to our collective growth, economic advancement and development. And today we will be talking about some of those key issues that have been happening over the course of the last 24 hours. Of course, this is where we talk Nigeria and take you around the latest development. But today we'll be starting off with the economy, talking about Naira rebounds as a CBN clears forest debt backlog, which of course is, I don't know, maybe economists would say it's the beginning of a new interesting turn for Nigerians, or of course, the issue of Naira scarcity, which of course CBN has also refuted. They're working on it. We'll also look at the allocation of the student loan, which the lawmakers have decided in their magnanimity to opt the figure that was presented by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Of course, we'll be looking at the development coming from the impasse between Labour Party, not Labour Party, rather, the organized Labour this time around, leadership, particularly the President Joe Ajero, and the Hope Uzodinma, the governor of Imo State, over the issues that surrounded them. We'll also be looking at the supplementary budget, which the Senate, the National Assembly, have passed into law. Of course, that means a whole lot for the fight between Labour and the federal government. A whole lot of issues that we'll be looking at. And we're not forgetting that today is also the International Day to end impunity against journalists. Yesterday, rather, was the International Day to End Impunity Against Journalists. So we'll be having that conversation today amongst a host of other things we'll be bringing to you this morning. And of course, we'll definitely encourage you to join the conversation on our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. Feel free to use the phone lines to connect us and let us know what you think about the different stories. You can send a direct SMS or WhatsApp message, and still we will be able to entertain those comments this morning.
Of course, it's Rise and Shine, the Friday edition, lifestyle, and so much more, brought to you by Spectrum this morning. And there's a myriad of things we want to look at. Remember very well that sometime at the beginning of this year, 2023, about the second, third month of the year, we had the worst experience that we have ever seen with regards to the cash crunch. Everyone was running helter-skelter, looking for their own money to spend. And in the course of all of that, a lot of people lost monies via their bank because, transactions were not pulling through. And I think just last month, the CBN or the NBS at this time gave us a statement of how many billion naira has been stuck in transactions in the year 2023 alone, and it ran into hundreds of billions. And that's a major problem. Now, remember also that the old naira was meant to have elapsed at a certain time, and then it was extended to December of 2023. So the old and the new notes were allowed to run concurrently, and the due date was meant to be December for all of the old notes to be taken out of the system. But of course, as developing with regards to that particular issue, we've seen the CBN come out to say that there is going to be no benchmark put on December 2023 for the use of these monies. We do not know if they have developed a new system by which they want to recall all of the old naira and make available the new naira nationwide. But the Central Bank of Nigeria has said that there is going to be no pressure put on Nigerians, to stop the use of the old naira. But there seems to be a new trend. People are complaining that they're not easily finding, cash around the country, and that's surprising because the central bank is saying we are circulating funds. What is about to start this new current scarcity? But okay, so that's what it is. The Central Bank of Nigeria is refuting cash scarcity reports, and of course they are assuring Nigerians that there is accurate currency in circulation in the country.
Well, when the Central Bank of Nigeria said there is accurate cash in transaction, available across the banks, there would need to be a lot more specifics to Nigerians at this point in time. Which of the cash is available? Which of the cash are you making efforts to make sure it's enough for Nigerians to use? Are you talking about the old currency, or you're talking about the new currencies? Yeah, I don't know when last you touched the new currency, when last you visited the bank, and how many of those currencies was given to you. I know that in recent weeks I've had reasons and needs to go to the bank directly, not even talking about POS operators. And then you're withdrawing 20,000 naira. You see just one 500 naira note of the new naira note. The rest of it is old naira note. And then you're withdrawing maybe 50,000 and you're seeing like maybe 3 pieces of the 500 naira note, one of the 1,000 naira note, and one of the 200 naira note. That's the new naira note now. And so if we are talking about the new naira note being widely in circulation, and that's a big lie on the part of the bank. But if you're talking about making the old naira notes available to Nigerians, then of course we can also say maybe the bank is taking the steps to make sure that is done. But there are a lot of concerns here. I don't know, maybe it's particular to Akwa. I'd like for you as a Nigerian to let us know how it is in your locality or in your area. Because one thing I'm observing it seems like the banks literally don't put money in their ATM machines on weekends, that people have to suffer. Once it gets to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then Akwa Ibomites will definitely have a whole lot of issues. So it's gradually becoming like a tradition that if you're in the state, you'll have to make withdrawals on Monday through Thursday to prepare for the weekend, because you definitely know by Friday, by the time you get to afternoon, the monies are done in the ATM, and it will be a miracle for you to stop by one ATM machine that is actually dispensing as at Friday evening, Saturday through Sunday, unless of course you go to the banking headquarters, which is usually crowded, and sometimes the money there also finishes because every traffic is redirected to Udodoma, where most of the banks have their headquarters. So it's a big problem. So if you have cash available across the different banking banks facilities that we have across Nigeria, and then banks are not putting money in their ATM machines, what is the problem? Is it the inability on the part of the banks to monitor the staff assigned that responsibility to make sure the ATM machines are filled, or is it a deliberate move by the banks to stop Nigerians from using their funds when the need arises or when they need to use it? Or is it a deliberate move to push Nigerians to the POS operators? Remember, during the cash crunch, banks were not giving out money, but you would find POS operators having money. And then you ask questions. One very serious experience I had was around the Naira note, when Nigerians were looking for it. Of course, we saw video of the young girls who were, throwing the new Naira notes, in parties, while Nigerians who had worked and hard, so hard to earn that money, were not by any way able to reach it or have access to it to transact business with it. So it's a grave concern at this point, but one would expect that the CBN statement will be backed up with actions. That is, if they have not already taken that action, and that Nigerians should be able to see that action, visibly shown through the different banking halls across the nation. And yes, when we see that, then we'll see the CBN is actually sincere in what they've said to Nigerians.
Well, the director of corporate communication is Issa Abdulmumin, of course, of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He's the one who came out to refute the claims of the cash scarcity at banks, point of sell, the ATM machines, and all of that. He said in his report, and I quote him, "Our findings reveal that the seeming cash scarcity in some locations is due largely to high volume withdrawals from the CBN branches by deposit money banks, DMBs, and panic withdrawals by customers from ATMs." I think another question will now be, why do citizens have to panic withdraw? What are they hearing? What are they envisaging where the Naira is concerned that people need to panic withdraw and keep at this time? And like you said, the Central Bank of Nigeria really does have to go beyond just giving us a press release. We need to see that whatever the situation is across the country with regards to the availability of cash is addressed immediately. If it's an issue of DMBs not, loading up their ATM machines, let the Central Bank of Nigeria call these banks to order so that Nigerians do not experience a repeat of that. What happened earlier on in the year. It was such a serious, issue. Of course, the CBN has assured the public that while they have noted our concerns on the availability of cash for financial transactions, they assure the public that there is sufficient stock of currency notes for economic activities in the country. Well, this is what the CBN is saying. So let us be on the lookout for one another at this time. Is it the CBN or is it the DMBs? Who exactly is causing this perceived cash scarcity at this time? But of course, I'm still talking about the Naira this morning. We need to know what is happening in the economy. We need to know what's happening with our money. Today is Friday. Business has gone on since Monday, transactions. We're talking stock exchange. We're talking forex. We're saying all kinds of things. How has the Naira fared? At the parallel market all week long? Are we climbing? Are we coming? To what exactly is happening? Well, of course, we see that as of the end of last night, the Naira rebound as CBN cleared forex debt backlog, and that should sound like some good good news. Well, the Naira had risen to 1,120 Naira against the dollar as the foreign exchange market reacted to news that the Central Bank of Nigeria had begun to clear some of its FX backlog on Thursday. But of course, this represents an appreciation of 50 Naira or 4.27% compared to the 1,170 Naira traded on Wednesday. So of course, we see the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria now has attempted, moved up to clear the forex debt backlog. We had been given information earlier on, I think last week, that about 10 million US dollars was going to be borrowed to cushion the Naira at this time to perform well against the forex. So let's see, if this move by the, Central Bank of Nigeria now to clear the backlog on forex debt is going to help the Naira to come back down in its fare against the dollar.
Well, of course, appreciating by about 50 Naira, it's commendable. Within the first few hours of the Central Bank of Nigeria beginning the move to clear the FX backlog. But before we start celebrating, Nigerians will say, let's wait for the next 1 week. Let's wait for the next 2 weeks to see how the FX, the Nigerian currency, the Naira, is going to fare between now and then as compared to the dollar. But many people would say it's something that we need to celebrate when it actually normalizes, because I mean, when you imagine how swift the dollar has, the Naira has appreciated against the dollar, or rather depreciated against the dollar, you definitely know the Nigerians have been in serious problems. So we look forward to a point where the dollar would go back to maybe $1 to about 200, 300 Naira, 400, or even lesser than that, so we can have normalizing our economy. But beyond that, Nigerians will also call for transparency and accountability and commitment on the part of the CBN. Yes, you're pumping money, we're borrowing money to stabilize the FX, to normalize, clear the backlog, and make sure that the Naira performs better when it comes to the dollar. But aside from borrowing to clear the backlog of the FX, what other economic policies are we putting in place? What is the CBN looking towards bringing on board to make sure that after normalizing or stabilizing the dollar to the Naira disparity, we are going to be able to sustain it? Because it is not going to be beautiful when after borrowing to normalize, within the next couple of weeks we hear the dollar is up again and we need to go borrowing again to be able to stabilize the Naira. So the CBN leadership, Kadaso and his team of members need to look into the issue. The economic and finance minister needs to sit down with the CBN governor and other stakeholders in the finance and economic sector to look at ways that the Nigerian Naira can be better positioned to perform against other national currency. Because until that is done, then the high cost of living we're talking about and lamenting in Nigeria is not going to go away. Inflation is not going to go away. Cost of transportation is not going to go away. Every other thing that is dependent on the dollar naira disparity is not going to change. And of course, people who are coming into the country, the festivities are here. So people who are coming into the country might not necessarily. I think yesterday I had a conversation with a friend who was planning to come down for Christmas. Like, I'm imagining coming down to Nigeria for Christmas with the way things that I'll literally be having the entire community coming to my doorsteps because of the hardship. And I'm imagining if I come down and I'm not able to meet up with the expectations, how will that, stand out for the generality of people who look up? Because obviously when they begin to say, oh, the dollar is performing better when it comes to the naira, then you're coming and maybe you're not able to meet up their expectations. And then probably somebody would have given 10, 20, 30,000 naira in this past and it will amount to something. You can't give that person 50,000 naira today and it will amount to anything. So a lot of conversations, a lot of issues, but being able to normalize or bring down the naira to what it used to be or even better than what it used to be will significantly change the landscape for Nigerians.
It definitely will. Speaking of with the fact today is dirty, today is Friday and it's lifestyle conversation talking about dirty December and those kind of dirty Friday, dirty DETTY. People are asking how prepared are you for the holidays? I mean, we are just about a month in to the holidays, and people are also saying there is no money for all those kinds of frivolities. People just have to go and eat what they see, do what they can. This doesn't look like that particular Christmas where people are going to have to spend a lot. But is there a way that the federal government, the Central Bank of Nigeria, can mitigate on all of this? Of course, we're still having all of those palliative conversations where everyone had said that this palliatives, it wasn't going to see any good end at the end of the day. I've met a couple of people who have asked me, Madam Journalist, these palliative people are always talking about, we've not seen it come to us. Who exactly has benefited? And do not forget, Francis, that billions of naira have been voted and set aside for this palliative venture. So at this point where petrol is selling at almost 700 naira per litre, diesel is at 1,000 plus, we don't know what the holidays are going to be like. So it's just important that everyone starts planning. I mean, the bag of rice as of yesterday was selling at about 59,000 naira. Who is going to eat and who is going to stay hungry?
Well, it is a serious cause for concern. Who is going to eat? Who is going to stay hungry? But just to raise the hope of Nigerians, would say Nigerians have always been able to stay through with a lot of things, and we always found ways to survive even the harshest situations that life throws at us. In as much as the situation right now is biting hard, we'd like to encourage Nigerians to do the much we can. But the conversations right now is about being contented with what you have or what little is available to you and forgetting to live to please people. Remember, this Christmas period, people always would want to travel home. They want to do everything to please family members, please friends, show up and show off that, I mean, I've been living in a city, I've been working, I've been earning. So everybody wants to go down to the village and begin to raise shoulders. There's literally no need for you to live and try to please the next person when you know for a reality, for a fact, that if you're doing that, by January, when reality strikes, you definitely will be in a serious problem. You definitely would want to readjust your lifestyle, eat what you can, buy what you can. I mean, every day is not going to be Christmas, and every day is not also going to be, or every other Christmas is not going to be this hard biting on Nigerians. Better days will come. If you can afford a chicken, fried, go ahead, have a chicken. If you can afford goat, go ahead. If you can afford some scales of stockfish goes, go ahead. If you can afford ice fish, please, by all means, use that to make your sauce and your stew and enjoy it. Nobody's going to.
This is not the way it was meant to be. I think that's a major problem because, I mean, Nigerians are still working very hard, but it looks like the money is not commensurate to the amount of work we are putting in, and then people just have to adjust their lifestyle. Francis, remember that it is the everyday Nigerians that are, adjusting their lifestyle. It's not our politicians. Look at all of the monies that they are voting. The president came under fire yesterday for setting aside 5 billion naira for a certain yacht, and all of the nation has literally gone on smokes and flame in terms of conversations with regards to that. And then we saw conversations retracting. Now at plenary yesterday, we also saw that that 5 billion naira that was set aside for the yard has been taken off. And then just going to our next story, on the heel of that, that 5 billion naira that was set aside to get a yard now has been said by the plenary that will be taken and added to the student loan. So just to give that perspective, of course, the National Assembly yesterday did pass the supplementary budget of 2.17 trillion naira for supplementary budget for 2023. Now, of course, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had presented that budget on Tuesday. The House of Representatives deleted the 5 billion proposed for the presidential yacht. Francis, we are still coming to this conversation where it has been said. So it looks like the federal government is just trying to confuse us. Who exactly is telling the truth? Who is telling the lie? First of all, it was said there is no yacht. Second of all, it's for the Navy. Now it is called the presidential yacht. How many names has that yacht been given to? At the end of the day, well, at plenary yesterday, the 5 billion proposed for the presidential yacht was taken and added to the 5 billion initially allocated for the students' loan scheme. So the Senate okayed the 5 billion proposal for the yacht. Both bills may be harmonized before being forwarded to the president for assent. So this is where we stand. Are we looking at the fact that student loan now starts at 10 billion?
Well, it's beautiful thing to see that the student loan has been increased by 5 billion. And then I think one thing Nigerians would always say, you can't trust anything coming up from the federal government. You can't trust things coming from the presidency, especially when it comes to do with luxury spending on frivolities, spending on things that are not by any way going to advance the economy of the country. Remember when the yacht first came out, the report was, it is not, there's no budgetary allocations like that for a yacht in the budget. There's no such item. And then it moved from there is no such item to, it wasn't for the presidency, it was for the Nigerian Navy. And then you ask, the Nigerian Navy, please, by all means, the yacht is a luxury ride. So what would the Nigerian Navy be using a luxury ride for?
Fighting crimes on the sea.
Fighting crime with a luxury yacht? That is literally the first thing the pirates would attack and seize from the army or from the Nigerian Navy. If you buy that, 5 billion naira, and then put it in Nigerian waters, what's the guarantee that the Nigerian Navy will be able to protect that yacht? Let's say, okay, you're buying it for the high-ranking members of the Nigerian Navy to maybe take a cruise when they feel like going on a holiday. Let's assume
upon taxpayers' money.
No, let's just assume for a moment, that you're buying the yacht, or the intent for buying the yacht is for the high-ranking members of the Nigerian Navy to go on a boat cruise or a yacht cruise. When they have holidays or when they just want to feel what their men are going through in the high sea. Just look at it for a moment. Let's see if that was the intent. Now, in the event that pirates attack, were we targeting a bulletproof yacht? So you say, okay, we are looking at a bulletproof yacht. So when it's on the high sea, it's going to help the Nigerian Navy, to combat this. But we've not heard any mention of a bulletproof yacht. A yacht is a yacht, and the yacht cannot stand against attack with heavily armed personnel. So it's crazy the things that happens in this country. But Nigerians will tell you, we have seen a whole lot of crazy. We've seen a lot of bizarre situations. We've seen a lot of misrepresentation. We've seen a lot of falsehood. We've seen a lot of propaganda. We've seen a lot of, just trying to paint the right picture when the cat is already out of the bag, when the milk is already spilled, and then an attempt to mop up the milk would lead to a lot of, counter statement. And then sometimes you find different agents of government issuing different statements about the same thing. And then it takes time before everybody realizes, this person has issued a statement concerning this. That ministry has issued a statement concerning this. Let's retract all the statement and come up with one statement for Nigerians to get to here. So it's funny. It's ugly. It's a trend that needs to be stopped in Nigeria as far as we are concerned as a people. And I keep saying this. Nigerians would say, if Ahmed Bola Tinubu is sincere about the touted renewed hope for Nigeria, we need to see a deliberate move on the part of the president to make sure that luxury spending, frivolities, all of these things are not found in the ways of government, in the spendings of government. Because I mean, yeah, you can say a private person has a yacht, or that some private individuals in Nigeria have their own yacht, to go on a boat cruise. But what
What
is
does
the
the
need
federal
of that
government need
for
it
the
for?
president?
Yes.
And if the president wants to go on a boat cruise, on a yacht cruise in the Nigerian waters, come on. There are
Talk to
top.
one of your fellow elites of the elites. I mean, that shouldn't be a
Not
problem.
necessarily. You can rent it. For crying out loud, you can rent it and go on your boat cruise. Yes, Nigeria will understand. Maybe the president wants to see the Nigerian waters and experience it. Yeah, we can understand that.
We are
But
just a wasteful economy. We are an absolutely wasteful economy. That's the problem. We always misappropriate what is most important. We are not putting energies where energies need to be put. Of course, there is already a conversation on the ground with regards to this wage award and all of that, what can be paid or what cannot be paid. But you're seeing the Nigerian government, you will see able-bodied men and women, you know, sit down and allocate funds for things that are not reasonable even to the layman. You're seeing how difficult it is for some persons to be able to afford. At some point in the economy, a square meal for some people stood at 500 naira. As of now, it has gone up to 1,000 naira, where some people cannot even afford. I think it stands at about 1,200, where some persons cannot even afford. That's for a meal. So if people are going to have 3 square meals every day, you're talking about 3,500, 3,600. That is something that some people cannot afford. And you want to take 5 billion naira and put our vessel, you know, on the water. It doesn't absolutely make sense. I think I was looking at an African country yesterday. The name is eluding me. I hope that comes to me in the time being, where a former president wants to return back to politics. And in the law of that country, it is stated that if you have retired from active politics and you want to get back into the system, all of your retirement benefits are going to be withdrawn. So the police escorts, the house, the health insurance, the pension scheme that is being paid to you as former president is going to be taken back from you because you want to go back to active politics. Francis, we've been having these conversations. How many of our sitting senators are former governors of state that are still receiving allocations and pensions and derivations from their state as former governors, but yet they are sitting senators? Look at the Senate president, for instance. He was the former president of Akwa Ibom State, a former senator of the 9th Assembly, now a senator of the 10th Assembly, and the Senate president of the country. Are you receiving monetary benefits from across all the services that you have rendered to the country? How can we have a National Assembly that sits down and streamlines the income of public service holders, of politicians in our country? Why are we cheating Nigerians of what you know, should be theirs? Why don't we have people in this country? I mean, that is what they are for at the Senate, at the National Assembly, lawmakers. Why are you not making laws that are favorable to the economy? Why don't we hear these kinds of happenings in Nigeria? That if you have served in a particular political office and you're done from there, you have retired, if you're moving on to the next office, you cannot be getting pensionable benefits from that office. But no, they will close their eyes on it and still tell you that what they're earning at the National Assembly isn't even enough.
well, it's a sorry situation. I think that was in Zambia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's Zambia.
Where,
Thank you.
where the former president is coming out of retirement to contest for election again. Well, Nigerians will tell you, when it comes to making laws, most of these guys, these men, these women who go to the National Assembly, be it the red or the green chambers, are not there because of the interests of Nigerians. They are there for their personal pockets. They are there to enrich their families. They are there to enrich their cronies. That's the conversation Nigerians will tell you. Because if they were actually there to protect the rights of Nigerians, to make legislations that will better the generality of Nigerians, where each and every person can actually go about doing their duties, doing their job, and getting more than enough to survive and fulfill their visions and purpose, then we would see a lot of people focus, legislations coming out from the National Assembly. And the issue of cutting costs of governance has been consistent, but so far we've seen nothing being done about it, neither by the Senate or the House of Rep. But of course, a lot of people would say, if you want to blame the legislators, blame Nigerians as well. Because until Nigerians rise past the paltry sentiment or the slavery mentality of electing people just because they have the financial muscles, or just because they buy you a few bags of rice during electioneering period, or give you wrapper or 2 bags of yam, or a few thousands of naira note, you sell your conscience and you vote for somebody you know for a fact does not by any way have your interest at heart. And if we don't get to that point, we're still going to see the crop of politicians that we're having across board. Because when people spend money, when they buy your conscience and then get into office, they've already bought your conscience. And whatever money they expended buying your conscience, they're going to want to have to recoup it back. And that is one of the reasons that, economic experts and political affairs analysts would always tell you, this is why Nigeria is the way it is. We don't have technocrats. We don't have people-driven leaders. We don't have leaders whose deliberate intention, whose reason for coming into the political space is to change the story of Nigerians. If we had people like that, then we'll have a whole lot of beautiful pieces of legislation coming out from the National Assembly. But be that as it may, even you, auntie, uncle politician, when you are voted into office, you look at the environment, you look at your immediate surrounding, you look at the constituency that, you are voted in to represent. There is no access road, there are no hospitals, the educational facilities there are in a dilapidated state. You find people are living in abject poverty, but rather than look at how you can better the lives of those people, you rather spend a whole lot of money, protecting yourself against the people, buying bulletproof vehicles. If you go to some politicians' houses, the fence is as high as God knows how, because you're afraid of, being robbed, you're afraid of being kidnapped. But all of those fears can vanish into thin air when you prioritize creating legislations that will make every person in Nigeria to be able to look at things and then be able to afford them. Because the moment is like family relationship. The proverbial African adage says, when everybody in the family is eating, there is not going to be that room for brothers to look at brother and begin to call the brother a bad name, because you have something to eat. So when brothers and sisters are gathering, this one brings a pen, this one brings a book, this one brings a table. Everybody has something to bring to the table. And so that envy of, oh, he's doing better than me, or she's doing better than me, or if he feels that, because he has a better source of living and all of that, those toxic conversations is not going to come in. So our politicians need to understand that this present scenario they are creating in Nigeria by focusing on their personal interests will one day get to a point where they will no longer be protected by the high walls. They will no longer be protected by bulletproof vehicles. They will no longer be protected by the heavily armed personnel that they carry around. Because when the Nigerian people get pressed to a point that they can no longer help but bounce back violently, then even the security agencies can be, suppressed. But we don't want it to get to that point. That is why analysts would say politicians need to look past their personal sentiment, their personal interest, their personal greed, to looking into how to invest in the Nigerian people.
Very, very important, but we're going to move on from that particular story. Remember last week that 10 resident electoral commissioners were appointed in different states of the country. And Itekemba Omorin was named in Akwa Ibom State. About 24 hours later, when that particular list was looked up again, Itekemba Omorin's name was missing. So there was no awarding for a reg position in Akwa Ibom State. But here now we see, this morning that the PDP is suing President Tinubu for appointing an APC member as Akwa Ibom reg. Of course, there's been a lot of controversy around this particular appointment of regs in different states. It's more like who questions of who has the authority to do this, who is the one instituting this regs. Is it the state governors? Is it who suggested these people that they will have this much authority? Well, now we're seeing the People's Democratic Party move to sue President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for appointing an APC member at Akwa Ibom reg. And let's also put it out there, Akwa Ibom State is governed by the opposition party, that's the People's Democratic Party. We see here that they moved to the court for allegedly appointing a member of his party, the All Progressives Congress, as resident electoral commissioner. of the Independent Electoral Commission. Now, the suit was filed by the chairman and secretary of the state, PDP, Ania Kanakman and Harrison Ekbo, respectively. Now, they are challenging the choice of Itekemba Morin as the rec for the state. We see here that on Wednesday, they confirmed the appointments of 7 out of 10 recs forwarded to it on Tuesday by the president. So 10 were forwarded on Tuesday, but only 7, were confirmed, leaving out the likes of Itekemba Morin and the other 2 for whatever controversies. But here is it. A court move because of that move in Akwa Ibom State.
Well, I think as of yesterday, the first day before yesterday, rather, the first 7 resident electoral commissioners were screened. Itekemba was among the 7 that were initially screened. 3 others were not available. They were screened later on yesterday, and the list added to about 10 of them that were earlier nominated. Of course, that generated a lot of reactions. I know that within the course of the week, precisely on Wednesday or thereabout, today's Friday, on Wednesday there was a press release held by a convergence of civil society organizations in Akwa Ibom State, condemning the appointment of Itekemba Morin as the resident electoral commissioner in Akwa Ibom State or from Akwa Ibom State. Whether or not it will be posted to Akwa Ibom State is another conversation. But the standpoint of the civil society organizations, different people who were part of that convergence, was that Itekemba Morin has been a card-carrying member of the APC. He's been a former chief of staff for the now Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, at some point. And those things are political appointment. And for you to be appointed into those positions, it means you're a card-carrying member of a particular political party. Now, as far as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is concerned, it has been clearly stated that no card-carrying member of a political party should be made a resident electoral commissioner. Now, in the event that that happens, there are situations that will throw the electoral umpire into further issues with the Nigerian people. For one, we're already standing at the point where Nigerians do not trust INEC. Nigerians do not have confidence on INEC and the electoral process. So now imagine having an APC card-carrying member or somebody who was once, because I asked a question when I spoke with one of those civil society organization leaders. What if Itekemba Morin had actually retired or resigned his membership from the APC? And I said, once a card-carrying member, always a card-carrying member. Whether you have moved away from that party, okay, if he has moved away from APC, which other party is he belonging to? Is he telling Nigerians that he has retired from active politics before he was given that appointment? I think beyond all of this conversation, the most critical thing that we need to look at this point is the conversation around the observation made by the EU election observers in 2023 this year, where they said the selection process of people within the ranks and file of INEC should not be a political appointment. Because as long as it remains a political appointment, you're talking about a president who is sitting at the helms of affairs, possibly looking for a second term, appointing resident electoral commissioners across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT. Now, who do you think these people are going to be loyal to in the event that something arises or there is a need to compromise? Is it the opposition that did not appoint them and they are not loyal to, or the people who appointed them into those positions? Now, those are conversations that as long as we keep having the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria mandating presidents to appoint resident electoral commissioners, we are still going to go through the same cycle.
Definitely, we're still definitely going to have these kinds of biases, coming into play when it is the president that is saddled with that responsibility. Why don't we have an institution that is set aside to do this? And if the laws and the guidelines have said you cannot be, of course, if you are a card-carrying party member, it's going to have some biases on how you're going to adjudicate your roles, when you get to those places. But what we see here with regards to this particular issue is that no date has been fixed for the hearing of the suit as filed against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The PDP National Publicity Secretary Debo Ologumba addressed the press in Abuja, stating that the opposition party was opposed to the choice of Morin as Akwa Ibom State rec. Of course, we see that they allege that Morin's appointment was a plot by the ruling party to manipulate future polls and perpetuate itself in power. This is going to be like the crux of what the issue is, as the People's Democratic Party kicks against Itekamba Moran being the one to oversee elections in Akwa Ibom State. Well, as long as everyone is concerned, he's a brazen can't member of the APC, because I mean pictures and videos were called up and presented to the court, having seen him on campaign grounds with the now Senate President and all of that. So they're saying this guy cannot be the one in charge of our elections in Akwa Ibom State. And let us see how, even INEC in Akwa Ibom State, the whole institution currently responsible for appointing this reg, let them deliberately sit down and make sure, because as we are, the race toward the next 4 years, cycle of election has already begun. So we need to put things in place. Everybody knows that INEC needs an overhaul. They cannot start making poor decisions right now ahead of the next 4 years.
Well, it's a little bit dicey situation, or should we call it in between the devil and the deep blue sea at this point, because this conversation is spanning past just INEC as an electoral umpire. It's also spanning down to affect AKISEC, that's the Akwa Ibom State electoral umpire. I recall yesterday, still in the course of this conversation, the questions have been asked: if the PDP in the state are against the election or the appointment of Saitekemba Moran into INEC as a resident electoral commissioner, what happens to the generality of PDP members who form the state electoral umpire, who are saddled with the responsibility of conducting local government councils election? So it's going to be a lot of issues. Probably which should work in the interest of Nigerians and Akwa Ibomites, because if the PDP is taking the APC to court on the issue of Saitekemba Moran, then probably we'll also be seeing the APC, yes, taking the state government and AKISEC to court over the fact that majority of the people in AKISEC allegedly are of the PDP family. And then, of course, that has been given as the reason why across board, Akwa Ibomites can't recall the last time you saw people outside of the PDP becoming local government chairman. So it's a sweep, it's a clean sweep. And if you have multiple party system, there is no way you would say that across the 31 local government areas of the state, no other political party could clinch the position of a local government chairman. So it's a big question, it's a big concern. But whether or not this case is going to spiral out, however this case spirals out, is going to be in the interest of Nigerians, in the interest of Akwa Ibomites. But then, it also will depend on whether or not there are people in the state who are willing to take up this responsibility and call the bluff of the state government and the federal government at this point. Ahmed Bola Tinubu going to court or being dragged to court is a step taken in the right direction. The PDP is an opposition and they have a duty to remain a strong opposition in the interest of Nigerians. The APC, on the other hand, also have a responsibility to ensure that everything is done right within the constitutions or by the books of the country. But it's a fight that we're just beginning to see the beginning, and we'll wait to see how it's going to unfold. Well, either ways, the legal expert will tell you it is wrong. And of course, it is something that should not have been seen by a government who wishes or whose body language or whose intent is to transform the narrative in Nigeria. But of course, this is where we're going to pause this conversation. Of course, we'll be heading out to the newspaper, front pages of newspapers in Nigeria, where we'll be taking you around the latest happening on Daily Spotlight. Stay with us.
Yes, of course, Daily Spotlight bringing you information from the front pages of the national dailies. Let's take a quick swipe on what's happening in Nigeria this morning. And our very first stop is going to be the Vanguard newspaper. Big story on the Vanguard, electricity policy flip-flop threatens $155 million smart meters project. Bid requires high turnover, cash flow, others in dollars. Why is Nigeria so dependent on the dollar? This is something that needs to be understudied by the economists in this country, because the dependence on, the dependence of African economies on the dollar is devastating to what we represent. We need to find a solution for this, Francis. And we also see here indigenous manufacturers kick petition federal government. Inter-ministerial committees swing into action. Report puts installed capacity at 4.5 million. TCN PMU reopens controversial bid. Experts call for cancellation. Engagement. Court orders unconditional release of Emefiele, page 6. Tax-seeking insurgents kill 40 in Yobe attacks. Very sad story there, page 6. Tinubu 6 fair, transparent poll in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi, page 4. Foreign portfolio investments down 31.9% to 108.9 billion naira. Page 19 is where you can find details of that particular story. We also see a picture story there, Nayeti boss receiving NNPCL's CFO. FCT, enough for me. I am not interested in running Rivers, says Wike. Of course, that should be his response to the case and the rumbling happening with Governor Fubara in Rivers State. Page 10 is where you want to look up Minister Nyesom Wike's response. Ajero in critical condition may be flown abroad, says NLC. Ajero politicizing labor activities in Imo, says Uzadima. This case should not spiral out of control. Page 7 is where we can find details of that. Of course, a picture story there. President Tinubu receiving APC Guber candidates on the November 11 elections coming up. We also see here Shippers Council crucial to economic diversification, new NSC boss. And that's all we have on the front page of the Vanguard.
Well, moving away from the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, we head out to the front page of Nigerian Tribune. And on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, 2023 supplementary budget, Reps transfers 5 billion for yacht to students' loan as National Assembly approved 2.17 trillion naira budget. That story is on page 10 and page 11. We also see Tinubu demands free, fair Guber polls in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa. Page 4 has a story. Court orders unconditional release of Emefiele from EFCC detention. That story is on page 4 and page 28. Of course, we're also seeing Reps move to recover over 30 billion US dollars revenue from major multinational oil firms. That story is on page 12. Test running of Red Line to commence December. Sanwo-Olu, page 16, has the story. CBN may begin disbursement of foreign airline strapped phones. Page 7 has a story. High volume withdrawals causing scarcity of Naira notes in some locations. CBN assures of sufficient stock. Dangote speak on allegation of economic sabotage. Page 14 has a story. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Moving away from the Nigerian Tribune, our next paper is Daily Trust. Manufacturers groan as diesel price hits 1,300 naira per litre. It's hitting us hard, says truckers. Factories may shut down, says experts. Inflation may get worse. I think one of the biggest questions Nigerians are also asking at this time is what exactly are members of the National Assembly sitting and deliberating on? What are the mandates of our system really concentrating on? What conversations are they having to move this country forward from the place that it is? Because the upturn and inflationary statements that we're having every day, it is troubling for the average Nigerian. But when we have 130 million people living below the poverty line, what is going to happen to this country? We'll move on from there. We see large withdrawals causing cash scarcity in some locations, says CBN. Trailer crushes 8 to death in Abuja. Hezbollah, Israel exchange fire as violence spikes at Lebanese border. And we also see here reps reject 5 billion naira presidential yard past supplementary budget. We also see here on the front page CSOs raised dust over 18 billion naira INEX supplementary budget. Really big question, Francis. What is the federal government setting aside 18 billion naira for an off-cycle election in 3 states? 18 billion naira. There's just a lot of questions to ask. Are we creating more channels to siphon money out of this already failing economy? This is a big issue, big question. The CSOs should receive a big thanks, and I hope they get answers for their questions also. Relief as CBN begins clearing $7 billion FX obligations. Nike's visit. We have every right to invite our Muslim brother, Sultan, replies critics. That's all that we have on the front page of the Daily Trust.
Well, our next up is the front page of Daily Times. We see on the front page that the kicker says, irate parents storm Delta school, draw gun on teachers. That's on page 5. Fear, confusion, grips staff, students, police react. We also see attack on NLC president. Aviation union expressed readiness to deal with Uzodinma. Says governor has murdered sleep. Okay, that story is on page 6 of the Daily Times newspaper. Still on the front page of Daily Times. Tension over presidential yacht amid hardship in the land. We also see Wike approves funds for maintenance of National Mosque Christian Center. That story is on page 2. Uzodinma slams NLC leader gives own story. Page 9 has the story. Alleged cybercrime, arrested OAU students freed. Page 4 has the story. Those are the major stories on the front page of Daily Times this morning.
It's been from Daily Times, and we are going to be looking at the Punch newspaper next. The Punch newspaper is next this morning, and the big story there says reps reallocate 5 billion naira yacht vote. Navy clears Tinubu. Navy, not Tinubu, requested yachts for operations. Presidency and naval spokesman. Senate okays 17.5 billion naira yacht. Air fleet reps approve 546, I beg your pardon, billion naira defense budget. Naira gains as CBN pays banks $6.7 billion forex. Page 33 is where you can have details. Labour tackles Uzodinma, government says Ajero meddling. Page 43. NNPCL allocates 6 million barrels to Dangote refinery. Page 34 is where you can find details of that. Yaba overpowers. Others will stop train vehicular crashes, says Sanwo-Olu. Of course, Navy bust crude theft on Lagos vandalized pipeline. Page 44 is where you can find details. Lagos man drowns during church beach hangout. Very sad story there. Page 4. Tinubu demands fairness in Bayelsa, Imo, Kogi polls. Page 10. And that's all we have on the front page of the Punch.
Our last paper this morning is the front page of the Nation, and Kikade says Rivers crisis, why we are with Tinubu by PDP governors, situation capable of breaking down security. I'll protect party structure, Wike insists. Of course, we moved from there to another story. No FCT land allocation without infrastructure, says Wike. Page 6 has the story. Presidential yacht and naval security boat presidency clears the air. That's on page 28. Alafins to court strikes at suit against Makinde. Insurgents kill 24 mourners in Yobe State. Those stories are on page 27. Don't link us to economic sabotage, says Dangote Group. That story is on page 28 as well. Minister blames unstable power supply on surge in gas price. That story still is on page 26 of the Nation newspaper. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nation this morning, and that takes us to the end of Daily Spotlight. Of course, a whole lot of stories there to look out for and read up for yourself within the happenings of the day. But we'll take a short time out here and head out to the news brief next, where Mary Joseph is standing by to take us around the latest development. Just stay with us.
The only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters counsel is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for SpectrumTv to improve fertilizer counting.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for SpectrumTv to improve fertilizer counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. First in the news this morning, President Bola Tinubu has presented the symbolic flag of the All Progressives Congress APC to candidates contesting gubernatorial seats in Bayelsa, Kogi and Imo states. The president handed the flags to the candidates Hope Uzodinma, Timi Preye Silva and Ahmed Ododo of Imo, Bayelsa and Kogi State respectively at the Presidential Villa Abuja on Thursday, where he wished them victory at the off-season elections coming up on November 11th. Recall that the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) had fixed November 11, 2023 to conduct the off-season elections in the 3 states. The national chairman of the APC, Abdullahi Ganduje, led the 3 candidates to the presidential villa, where the flags were handed down to them. We head straight now to the Senate, where the Senate and the House of Representatives has passed the 2.17 trillion naira 2023 supplementary appropriation bill after 3rd reading. Before the passage of the bill, the Senate adopted the report of the harmonized sittings of both red and green chambers on the 2023 supplementary appropriation bill as submitted by the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Solomon Olamileko Adeola, APC Ogun West. The bill expeditiously scaled readings in both upper and lower chambers, as lawmakers said it is for the benefit of the country. Meanwhile, the Senate has confirmed the remaining 3 resident electoral commissioners for the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), nominated by President Bola Tinubu. The nominees are Dr. Bumi Omoseyidemi from Lagos State, Dr. Agum Onoha from Rivers State, and Ismaila Kaura Mui from Zamfara State. The trio were not present when the other 7 nominees were confirmed on Wednesday. We head straight now to the foreign scene, where President Joe Biden has voiced support for a humanitarian pause to Israel's war in Gaza as the United States presses to evacuate all Americans trapped in the besieged Palestinian enclave. Biden said this during a campaign after being interrupted by a protester who urged for an immediate ceasefire. The U.S. president's remarks marked a shift in the position of the White House, which has previously said it would not dictate how Israel's conduct its military operations. And finally, in sports, the Super Eagles Group C 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifying opponent, Rwanda has appointed German-born Torsten Frank Spieter as their new head coach. The Rwanda Football Association, FEWAFA, announced Spieter's appointment in a communique on their Twitter handle. Rwanda will first meet the Super Eagles in the World Cup qualifiers in March 2025 before traveling to Nigeria for the second leg in September 2025. Other teams in Group C are South Africa, Benin Republic, Lesotho and Zimbabwe. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful weekend.
Voting for SpectrumTv to improve fertilizer
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for SpectrumTv to improve fertilizer counting.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
as we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There is nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative, and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest, and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. Exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back and thanks for joining us. If you are just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, the Friday edition, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. On Rise and Shine, of course, we talk topical issues, strong matters arising out of Nigeria and other parts of the world, of course. But of course, we like to talk Nigeria. Just before we went on the news brief where Mary Joseph brought us a tidbit of global news, we looked at the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria had said that the Naira is rebounding because they have paid some forex debts that they were owing. We also see the central bank come out to refuse any kind of news with regards to cash scarcity around some parts of the country. Some of the other information that we have brought to you this morning on Rise and Shine is that lawmakers have squashed the 5 billion naira budget set aside to get a yard. Of course, that 5 billion naira has now been allocated to the student loan. We also see the fact that here in Akwa Ibom State, the People's Democratic Party have moved to sue President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for appointing Itekamba Omorin as the Akwa Ibom State INEC rec. Of course, the EC hears that Itekamba Omorin is a card-carrying member of the APC. We also see here that, of course, several other conversations about the fact that the presidency is refuting that the yard is not for the president, but it was meant for the naval, the Nigerian Navy. Now, the National Assembly are even saying it's not for the presidency, it's not for the Nigerian Navy. We ain't giving them. We're taking that monies and we're allocating it to the student loan. These are more some of the conversations we've had in detail so far on Rise and Shine. For you to catch up on all that, you need to follow us on our social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. Of course, we are streaming real time right now on YouTube. You can always get back to get the full scoop of all of the gist. Of course, yesterday we marked the International Day to End Impunity Against Journalists. We are here doing our work, but sometimes the terrain is not so much in favor of the journalists. All around the world, we are hearing incidents of things happening to journalists in Africa. Some of the most endangered species are the journalists. We'll bring you a report on that, and when we return, we'll be returning with our guest to bring you more conversation and Rise and Shine. So do stay with us.
International Day to End Impunity for Crime Against Journalists. Crimes against journalists are on the rise and are seldom punished. Members of the press risk their freedom and their lives in pursuit of the truth, while the attackers, ranging from criminals to political leaders, target them with impunity. As the world continues to advance democratic values, not only should protecting the press and respecting the valuable role it plays be highest priority, ensuring press freedom and freedom of speech must also be placed on the same priority level, with stifle penalties for offenders, regardless and irrespective of who they are or what position within the political, elite or armed forces they belong. The International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists is a United Nations recognized international day observed annually on 2nd November. The day draws attention to the level of impunity crimes against journalists, which remains extremely high globally. On November 2nd, the United Nations observed its 9th annual International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. The United Nations established this day in no small part because of the essential role journalists play in healthy and vibrant democracies. Independent reporters hold the powerful accountable for their conduct, their policies, and their results, and help their fellow citizens make informed choices that are untainted by propaganda or misinformation. When reporters are silenced, people are robbed of the information they need to make decisions that affect their lives. This commemoration is also necessary because journalism is as dangerous as it is important. Authoritarian and illiberal governments frequently target journalists and media workers with the ultimate goal of silencing them. As these hostile rulers seek to quell dissent, the work of journalists is growing increasingly treacherous. Journalists are being harassed, assaulted, jailed, and killed in record numbers for reporting on the activities of your government, issues of major public concern, and information ordinary people may not otherwise be able to access. These goals unchallenged far too often, emboldening perpetrators to continue their attacks and employ increasingly brutal tactics. One of the most infamous and heinous examples is the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi, who visited the Saudi consulate in Istanbul for paperwork confirming his divorce, was apprehended by a team of Saudi operatives, murdered and dismembered. Back here in Nigeria, to commemorate 2023 International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, the International Press Center, Lagos, Nigeria, has called for urgent but thorough investigations into the documented cases of crimes against journalists so that perpetrators can be held accountable. The International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists is observed yearly on November 2nd to pay tribute to journalists killed in the line of duty and to raise awareness of the dangers of impunity for crimes committed against journalists. Based on UNESCO's theme for this year's commemoration, Violence Against Journalists, the Integrity of Elections, and the Role of Public Leadership, IPC calls on Nigeria to take the lead in guaranteeing the safety of journalists at elections and while covering other assignments so that the country will not continue to rank poorly on global press freedom indicators. While commemorating this year's Day of Impunity of Crime Against Journalists, it is important to note what awaits truth tellers and work to completely eradicate it. Statistically, in every 10 murders of journalists, only one will end with a successful prosecution of the offender.
Well, of course, it's very important to pay attention to the activities of journalists, the dangers that we're exposed to on a daily basis in the line of duty. Recently in Nigeria, we've had different media houses being slammed with fine by the regulatory agencies and government. We've seen move. I think the most disturbing was the destruction of a facility of Dire Communications in Rivers State, which of course is still, the case is still ongoing in court, and we're yet to see the end of it. We're also talking about the fact that journalists, particularly investigative journalists and journalists who have refused to be detected to what they must do or what they must cover. Journalists who are committed to truth, journalists who are committed to speaking out for the generality of the people, targets of government officials, target of security agents, and of course this exposes not just them to dangers, this exposes their family as well to dangers. We've had reports of journalists killed within and outside the shores of Nigeria, and as we heard from that report, over 500 plus journalists around the world are currently in incarceration as a result of their job, which of course is a very disturbing fact. But beyond the numbers that are in custody, I think one of the very most important focus of conversation this morning would be the call by the IED in Nigeria for the Nigerian government and other governments of the world to prioritize security and safety of journalists in their respective domain, guarantee the freedom of the press, freedom of speech by the Nigerian people and the people of the world, and also ensure that journalists who are doing their duty, which of course by the position of being the further steps of the realm is to hold government accountable and ensure they act as the watchdog of society, are not harassed by security agents, are not harassed by politicians, they do not become the agent of target for criminal activities as opposed to what is being obtained. And one other major conversation is the fact that, people who go after journalists and our court needs to be dealt with. And the activism or activities and call for today is also for the judiciary to rise up to the responsibility of prosecuting people who have been found wanting, people who have been involved in the killings or other criminal activities against journalists.
I think one of the other important things for us to note is the attempt to gag the press, in different parts of the world. We are seeing moves being made. We are seeing laws and policies being put in place by different countries of the world. How journalists are faring is different from one climate to the other, and the policies, the laws, the institutions that are set up that either allow the media to thrive or are attempting to, gag the media. When we also see the place that the new age media is putting the mainstream media now, where it looks like in time past one would want to look for a strong story, a revelatory story from the mainstream media, and they would just tune in to a television station, tune into a radio station to be able to get that. But over time, we have seen different moves and different attempts where it looks like most media outfits are trying to quote their stories in favor of the state governments, in favor of the federal government. Journalists are not speaking out as boldly as they used to, speak up, or writing as boldly as they used to. In the history of Nigeria, would have the likes of Dele Giwa, who went down for audaciousness in journalism, and now we are seeing that it looks like there is a tilt taking away that energy of reportage from the mainstream media to the likes of David Hundeyin, who are hiding behind the mask, quote unquote, hiding behind the mask of social media to be able to bring to bear and bring to life their investigative journalistic work to the rest of the world. So it poses a big question: how safe are journalists in Nigeria? How safe are journalists in Africa? Let's even talk Nigeria, for instance. Some people have had to go on exile just to be able to stay safe in order to write, because every now and then, if we even look at investigative journalism, for instance, you are actually going to every now and then be what's the word now, stepping on toes and, you know, calling our names, and that becomes a very hard plane to play for a lot of people. So can we also see how the Nigerian Union of Journalists can come together, the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, can we come together and make laws that rather safeguard and preserve journalists in the country instead of just exposing them? And while we you know, having laws and activities within even our regulatory agencies that seem to keep the, you know, the media from performing the real things that they were called out to, why are we bent on reporting half the story than putting out the full blare there, the way it you know, in the best way possible, of course, within the ethics of the profession? And we're also seeing how a lot of media practitioners are coming under verbal abuse of all kinds, because when we are talking media now, we are balancing mainstream media and social media, and where, you know, journalists are taking advantage of all of these planes. We can also call in the conversation of the introduction of AI. How does it affect the job of the journalist in the 21st century? If we leverage on it for the kinds of the works of you know, investigative journalism and all of that, is it going to be an advantage for us? So the conversation about this year's International Day for Ending Impunity Against Journalists is a really broad perspective that we can actually look at in several ways. In what ways are we putting steps and modalities in place to make sure that the members of the fourth estate of the realm are actually safe and given ample room to do their work? When we are talking about opposition, the fourth thinkers, people who call the government to order or keep them in check, that is what the media does. But I remember that at the beginning of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, there were widespread speculations and fears that it may be doomsday for the media in Nigeria. But thankfully, that seems to have eased off several months into his administration. And we do hope that the media in Nigeria will thrive under this administration to be able to render the service that they do to, you know, humankind.
Well, it is an expectation. It is hoped that the media will be able to be given, not necessarily to be given, because it is right. It is a constitutional right as Nigerians. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the Freedom of Information Act, law in Nigeria is very much in existence. And so by virtue of being members of the media, we expect that those enshrined constitutional provisions for rights will be respected. But the conversation is not just about the provisions of the Constitution. It's about the implementation. Take, for instance, let's look through, take our minds back down to the COVID-19 period. You find situations where security agencies who were posted on the road would still harass a media person because they didn't understand. Some didn't understand what it meant by essential workers, and they didn't get to understand why a media personnel would be an essential worker who was still on duty. And then, of course, you're also looking at the attack on the media personalities or media practitioners, journalists, media houses for standing for the truth. As far as Nigeria and the world is concerned, people will always tell you the average politician, the average corrupt individual sees the journalist as an enemy because he or she doesn't want you to expose, you know, those hidden secrets that, you know, they don't want the public to know. So when you're a journalist who is committed to the truth, when you're a journalist who's committed to justice, when your media organization is not playing to the tune or dancing to the tune detected by the powers that be, especially when everything they're doing is not for the interest of the people, and you are championing the cause to redirect their attention, redirect the focus, and let the people know that they have a duty and they have a right to hold government and government officials accountable, you become the target. I think is it a legendary Tasha, I've forgotten the first name, I think Margaret Tasha, if not, that said, for you to be a journalist who is considered as not a troublemaker or not being a troublemaker, it means you're doing everything wrong, because the average journalist who is doing everything right is considered a troublemaker. You're a troublemaker to even the people, you know, that you're trying to save, because even the people have, you know, people in position of power and authority who they have interest in. And so that is when you begin, if you listen to radio stations and TV programs that you have phone-ins, you'll always hear different countering claims and accusations, different debates. Some people would be for, others would be against. Now, those who are for, regardless of how ugly the situation would be, is because they have interest. Let's take it down to politics now. People would see, people within a particular political party will see decisions and actions taken by their party in the interest of their party, regardless of how that would fare for the generality of Nigerians or for the generality of the people. So those conversations are going to be there. So beyond celebrating journalists who have paid the supreme price in the line of duty, beyond calling for government institutions to implement the constitutional provisions that protects the rights of journalists in terms of seeking information, in terms of doing their normal duty, it is also a time for security agencies to understand that the job of journalists is as critical and as important as the job of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And without the journalists doing their job, then we are not ready for transformation. We're not ready to change. We're not ready for accountability, transparency, and the true dividends of democracy is never going to be delivered to the generality of the people. But beyond that, they call for cases that are pending across the different courts of the Federation in Nigeria and outside the shores of Nigeria, in the continent of Africa and the world, are cases that needs to be adhered to. I mean, within and outside of Nigeria, there have been cases where journalists were brutally murdered while they're trying to, do their duties. Those cases have not been tried. Those cases have not been brought to a logical conclusion. Yeah. There have been instances where journalists are arrested and then state actors put up bogus claims or charges against them because they are reporting what is right. There are even continents or countries of the world, the likes of China, or Russia, China, Myanmar and other countries of the world who are very, very uptight when it comes to, lashing out on journalists because of their activities and reportage and what that would do. I recall a lot of these situations have been up over and the world over as we celebrate this day, which of course is to draw attention to the need for us to move away from attacking and perpetrating evil against journalists. The call is, it's about time for us to all understand that the job and responsibility of the journalist is for the generality good, whether you're in position of authority or you are on the part of the people. Because if you're in position of politics or authority and you are doing what is right, you definitely would need the journalists. And of course, we know in Nigeria, for instance, all the politicians want to be in the news on a daily basis because they understand the power of the media. And the only time the politicians don't want you to pick their names in the news is when they're doing something that is not in the interest of the people. Outside of that, their doors are thrown open, their offices are thrown open. Everywhere you accost them, they will stand and speak to you because they understand the power of the media and what that does for them in their future aspirations.
I think another conversation we can look at this morning is all of the wars that are breaking out in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, because when we have wars happening, you will not forget that the journalist has a role that they play in the reportage of these events. Look at the Israel-Hamas war that is currently going on. I remember, looking at an article where an Al Jazeera reporter who was on the field was actually called in to identify his wife and 2 children. So there are hazards on the job, that journalists have to pass through. In the midst of all of this, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war, the coups in Africa, there are journalists who are on the line. But of course, we do not want to have this conversation on our own. We have elder statesmen who understand the terrain and the contribution of journalism and journalists to the furtherance of democracy. We have this morning joining us a very, very reputable guest this morning. We have Dr. Anthony Thompson Odofia, former director and national coordinator non-communicable diseases. Of course, he is a good governance advocate, and who better to have this conversation with us. Good morning, Dr. Osora. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Francis.
Good morning, Doctor. Happy New Month. Good to have you joined us.
Oh, thank you very much.
So this morning we're just looking at
actually,
the conversation of ending impunity against journalists. We'll just touch on that a little bit before we, take you into one or two national issues. I don't know if you heard some of the conversations we were having so far, but let's have a conversation on how we can create policies to safeguard the work of the members of the fourth estate of the realm. Do you think that in current day Nigeria, journalists are given the ample room to do their work? And in your analysis, do you think that journalists are serving full term the way they ought to?
Yeah, thank you very much, Francis. Basically, ending impunity against journalists. Actually, the fundamental thing is having good leadership. They are referred to as His Excellency or Her Excellency. It presupposes that good people ab initio are supposed to be leaders. Once you have that, not people with skeletons in their cupboard and all that, they'll be extremely uncomfortable to be exposed. Just like thieves don't like being exposed. The same thing, bad leaders don't want to be exposed. There's a few cases abound, especially in Nigeria, including Nigeria. The other time, Khashoggi, the New York Times correspondent, I think in Istanbul, was cut to pieces inside the Saudi Arabian embassy, and nothing happened to anybody till today. So it's really strange. Delegiwa was bombed because of a story on Gloria Okon that pushed narcotics, and he was released from prison. He was found in London. He was later bombed by a military regime, Delegiwa. The same thing, I think we had then Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari, he jailed 2 journalists for speaking the truth. In fact, he passed a decree that telling the truth is a crime if it embarrasses the government. Tunde Thompson, Nukai Rabo were jailed. But paradoxically, Tunde Thompson, for whatever reason, came back and joined his government after being treated that way. It seemed to be encouraging impunity. So how to stop this thing again is getting good quality leaders. Not criminals, not funny people who push narcotics, not people who tell lies all the time. Once you have good leaders, they will have nothing to fear. They have nothing to hide. So the government will be transparent and open. The budget will be transparent. The expenditures will be transparent. So it would stop a lot of problems. You won't care what a journalist writes. In fact, if you're criticized, you'll appreciate that. But if you have bad leaders, that is why you have all these problems. Journalists will be killed, journalists will be locked up, journalists will be, all sorts of things will continue. But if a good leader, it's unlikely. Yeah, have you seen the Vatican locking up journalists? The Vatican is a country. I'm not aware about the Banco Ambrosiani issue. I've not seen any of this thing locking up any journalists. So if you have a good leader, you're unlikely to have that scenario. That is all I can say. And then we participate in politics. Ensure we go out and vote. Even if our vote does not count, tomorrow it will count. So that you have a good leader, you won't have all the impunity killing people unnecessarily. Thank you very much.
All right, of course, you've highlighted the fact that over time, journalists are being killed, executed, murdered in the most bizarre, in the most ugly, in the most inhuman ways because of their stance for truth, for justice, for fairness, and of course, asking for accountability on the part of corrupt politicians. But as we hold this conversation, how would you propose the journalist takes care of themselves first and foremost? Because as Nigerians would say, when it comes to your safety and security, first and foremost, you have to be responsible for it before we now talk about how the government can intervene and ensure that, journalists' rights are protected. Remember, most of these criminal activities that have been perpetrated against journalists are oftentimes done by state actors, members of the armed forces of a country, people within the high-ranking security apparatus. So how do we get past this as journalists, and how would you propose government continue to help?
You fight where legislation exists. You fight and ensure that it is changed. I know during you know that these days in Nigeria they pass bills in parliament very fast. In fact, the same day, not first reading, second reading, third reading, and then where they call members of the public to share this thing. Journalists can descend on parliament and ensure that they change those regulations. The same in National Communication Commission. You speak the truth, they will fine you for embarrassing the government. They find, I think, Channel Television Arise, they find them 5 million or 10 million. It is discouraging. So you need to fight, even in parliament. The journalists need to fight and ensure that those laws are not enacted. And then, if your colleagues are killed, ensure you pursue it to the logical conclusion. I don't see why Tunde Thompson was jailed for speaking the truth, and then the same guy came, invited him to government, unless he was hungry. I don't know. He joined the government. So it's actually working against journalists. It is not right. It is not right. So that is what journalists, you owe the responsibility to work hard. You hear a bill in parliament, move and ensure that it is not passed into law. Go with your numbers and insist. Those that are not, all these arbitrary impunity regulations by National Communication Commission and any of these other outfits to ensure that they actually ensure journalists don't speak the truth. You fight against it. That's what you should do. Basically, that is what you should do. If you don't do it, you're not likely to get any good results. The game will continue. And don't sermonize because you collect brown envelopes. You start writing positive things about an evil leader. It is wrong. They do that a lot. Many of these journalists, they appoint them as spokesperson, advisor on press and media and all that. You see what they write against these bad guys. You'll be very, very shocked. So that is, they are themselves, amongst your this thing, you should sanction them. Either remove them, either you have a register, like you have a medical register, like Medical and Dental Council. It's a register for journalists. You deregister them. You deregister them. People that tell lies and
promote fake news.
Improve the image of bad leaders. That is what journalists should do. It's their responsibility.
So
without doing that, it's unlikely it will stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. So speaking of, giving opportunity for people, using brown envelopes and all of the likes, let's come back to Akwa Ibom State. Just yesterday, we heard that the state governor, Pastor Omoyino, has appointed 50 extra PAs of the PAs to the PAs. And this is one thing we'll remember at the invent of his office.
Sorry, please repeat that aspect. I didn't hear.
Okay, so I'm saying,
repeat, please.
Yesterday, Pastor Omoyino, governor of Akwa Ibom State, appointed 50 extra personal assistants to certain offices in Akwa Ibom State. I think a month ago, he had already done about 358 such appointments. So adding 50, that takes our numbers up to about 400 personal assistants. But we also remember that when he had come in, he had said this was not going to be a government where we have PAs of the PAs. Let the young persons go and find what to do. But now with all of this appointment, it looks like he's contradicting himself. But I think something that stands out is there's speculations that most of the people that have been recently appointed as personal assistants are like people that served as opposition writers against the government of the day in Akwa Ibom State. But it looks like a lot of them have now been called in to serve in the cabinets of the government. We are still talking about like attempts. They might not be, they are not journalists in the same, but some of these people serve as opposition and write out things for the government. Now, how is this going to affect, us still putting torchlight on the activities of the government?
Thank you very much. So far, I'm impressed with quality of governance we have in Akwa Ibom State. We have been very lucky. My problem is the center. The center is really bad. By center, I mean federal government, Abuja and Co. So I'm impressed with his Arise agenda. I'm impressed so far with the the plans and programs he has. I'm impressed with some of the initiatives. But you see, I don't know whether they have pressure from certain quarters. Appointing too many people it doesn't solve the problem. The Caucasians say too many cooks spoil the broth. Yeah, because we have a crowd. What are you going to listen to? We're listening to 400 and something aides. How are you going to even, unless you can give them productive things to do. And it's a waste of money. In good governance, you don't waste money. That's the problem. Appointing multiple people, you waste money. The federal government had done that so badly that they set up duplicating agencies. ICPC, EFCC, and NFIU, all sorts of funny duplication in every aspect of this country. If the police is working well, no need for many of these agencies, including Federal Road Safety Commission. So many agencies you're wasting money on. That is why people are poor. And Oran Saye panel, Oran Saye committee was fantastic. He cut down all those multiple agencies, wasting public resources. But they refused to implement it. Yes, I don't know if Tinubu will implement it, but it's really bad. So all these multiple aides are unnecessary. Some states, they appoint 30,000 aides. It's not necessary. That's why, and they don't pay routine staff salary. So it's of no value. Most people, what intellectual input are they going to put into the government? Nothing. Yes, some I'm told they reward former thugs and all that. But I'll tell you quite frankly, God has been very good to Akwa Ibom. The quality of leaders have been reasonably okay. There was only a regime that had a lot of, what do they call it, easy ritualists and a lot of kidnappers and all that during that period, a lot of murders and all that. Minus that regime, others were relatively sane, relatively reasonable. So that is but I should advise Governor Moino, please, no need for too many aides. Yeah, they won't help you. They will complicate matter and they'll waste the state's meager resources. Use it and intervene. I'm happy when he's changing the face of primary schools. But not only 31 is not enough. Before he leaves, he can do 100 or 200 primary schools in Akwa Ibom State to look like that one in Barracks Road. That would be fantastic. Rather than giving money to aides. The aides won't help much. Even you, Oyai and Francis, if you have 400 people talking to you every day, how would you hear? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Usora, for coming on the show this morning. Our time got squeezed in, but you have given us your thoughts on very serious issues regarding impunity against journalists and also about the appointment being done in the state. Of course, cost of governance is important that we balance that out in the face of current day realities. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Do enjoy the rest of your day. That's the march we can absolutely take on Rise and Shine this Friday. It's been so good doing Rise and Shine Monday through Friday with you. Thank you, our very esteemed viewers. Until we return to your screens again next week, Monday, my name remains Uyai Anieka. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. God bless you.